Hi, I'm Richard Costello, and thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of the Castler podcast. Today, I'm joined by fractional marketing strategist Paola Piccinno. Paola spent most of her career in global tech corporations across the UK, EMEA, and now APAC. Last year, she decided to start her own fractional journey, focusing on partnering with B2B agencies and companies all over the world to support them with their ABM and broader marketing initiatives. Paola, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's very special to be introduced by you, Richard. We shared some great time at the marketing practice together across two very different and far away regions. Me all the way from Australia, you from the UK. And also what a change from your beautiful English accent to my Italian accent, which is not abandoning me despite all this international experience and living in a lot of different places. Is still very Italian. Really happy to be here.
Likewise, yeah, and it's I think it's just after 8 a.m. for me, and is it just after
Oh, yeah.
6 p.m. for you? Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's opposite ends of the day, but it's a Friday, so that's it's coming up to the weekend, at least for you. So today, going to be talking about a topic very central to what you're up to, which is account-based marketing, also known as ABM. And we're going to have a particular focus on what ABM success looks like and how ABM is evolving. Firstly, thought it would be good to give listeners a bit more context about who you are and how you've ended up founding Piccinno Strategic Marketing.
Yes, thank you for the question. It was never anything I had thought I would do, but not because I have lack of creativity or possibilities in life or my career, but because I was loving my corporate career, which I did for over 20 years so much. I must have been extremely lucky, or I must have learned already from my very first few years at Microsoft in Milan, where I started my marketing journey. I must have learned how to navigate complex metrics organizations with a lot of stakeholders to manage and to convince, so that I really thrived in those big environments with big teams and a lot of layers. But then after my experience at the marketing practice last year, and now I live in a beautiful part of Australia. It's south in Queensland, so on the east coast. For the ones of you who are not familiar with the geography of the country, it's called Sunshine Coast for a reason. I invite you to just Google it, and people call it paradise, which is very close to that. So for the first time in my whole career and life, I found myself not living in a big city. So when I decided to then move on from the marketing practice, there were not a lot of other options for me of corporations, big corporations to join in marketing, senior marketing roles, simply because that's not what the area offers right now. And I put out there, like many of us have done, that I was available for work and the skills that I could offer. And I was very focused, and I'm still focused on that right now, on offering strategic account-based marketing services to APAC clients. And within 24 hours, I was lucky enough to be found and approached by another global marketing agency in the ABM space. And then from that, more consulting work came in. So I guess my partner says, "Oh, you've done really well there. You found your niche." And I always say to him, "I think it's a niche that found me. It's ABM found me, really." So it just very organically became something that I do. And then the fractional movement came really strongly from the US. I'll talk about briefly what that is, what it means. In Australia, it's not as just not as available. The awareness is not there yet. And I found myself very passionate with the other fractional executives that I know here on the Sunshine Coast, but also globally. I found myself very passionate about the future of working, which is not that much. It's not future, really. It's already there. So it is perhaps a new, fancy, exciting way of defining really senior consultants that are dividing their times across different projects and different clients. So across a given week or month, I would give fractions of my time to different projects. And we can talk later perhaps about what those are. But my focus is still mainly B2B marketing strategies with, just high demand for my clients on account-based marketing strategies.
It's great the way that that's worked out for you in terms of the way that there was lots and lots of organic demand for your services and what your skill set, particularly also being able to do it in such a nice place as well. Because I was
For
looking on
now,
Google
that
Maps at where you're based.
oh yeah, yeah, oh, that's very quick. That's for now. That doesn't mean so. What I said about what I do now, I'm really having fun, and I think any of my clients could really confirm that I'm really loving what I'm doing. But I always have. It doesn't matter if I'm client side, marketing side, publishing side, and now working for myself. The work I do, the passion I put into what I do, has not changed. It's just the umbrella, the brands under which I'm delivering my projects. That's the difference. But what I deliver and the way I do it is still the same. And so yeah, for now this is a great place to be, and it will always be Sunshine Coast. But I'll keep moving. So just so we might have another part 2 of this podcast in a couple of years' time, and I'll be doing similar things for other clients somewhere else in the world. I never stop for too long. I never sit still for too long somewhere.
Yeah, that really comes across, I guess, from your career background. Yes, so let's dive into the questions. So how would you define account-based marketing?
So many definitions, of course, that we could come up with here. And I go through phases when I have my favorite and I stick to that in my narrative for weeks or months, and then I see another one through my researchers, or when I speak to other strategists, and I'm like, can I borrow that one? So I read somewhere recently on LinkedIn, someone really reputable around ABM, I think from the US, and it was something around account-based marketing would be what an executive director of any tech enterprise or big enterprise would do if they had the budget. I really like that. It is what it is it's a highly personalized and tailored way of running a marketing program. It is really strategic, or at least the way I approach it and the way I run marketing programs is at a really strategic level. And then there are the 3 typical ways of, the 3 different types of account-based marketing. They've been around for a long time, and I do see already some trends, especially coming out of the US, where these 3 types that I'm going to describe in a second, they're not as relevant anymore, and they're shifting, they're changing. But for many years, the 3 types of account-based marketing have been one-to-one, when then you only choose one account, and then you put all your efforts, energies, and resources into creating a campaign and a value proposition, and you find insights, and only all around just one account. Then there is the one-to-few or cluster ABM, and the sweet spot for me is between 3 and 7 accounts that have enough criteria in common so that the ABM campaign becomes relevant, stays relevant for all the accounts in the cluster. And then there's one too many. I personally would argue that it's not ABM anymore. It's a demand generation piece when you go above 100 accounts. So those are the 3 traditional ways of classifying account-based marketing. As I said, there will be a lot of people that think that's not the case anymore, that ABM is definitely absolutely evolving, and we shouldn't limit ourselves to these 3 types. But yeah, this is in a nutshell what account-based marketing is.
Yeah, it's a really helpful definition, and I think particularly to have those the 3 overarching categories, because those do come up so often when people talk about ABM. I actually thought it might be, I know we sort of created a set of questions in a certain order, but I thought that the next question might be, just given how you've answered that first one, where do you feel is the best place to start with ABM? So if you're looking at the one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many, is there a place where you sort of tend to see success, or is it all contextual? I don't know. What's your view on that?
I really like this question, and obviously it can be answered in so many different ways. I've seen success across different clients, even within the same region. I'm talking about APAC. That's what my expertise is at the moment, Asia Pacific and a little bit of the Middle East. I've seen success from different approaches, starting with a pilot. It's always the best idea. It helps to the marketing people that are really advocating for the ABM program within the organization, it helps them going back to their director, CMO, and demonstrate the first initial quick wins and success without having to wait 2 years to get the first results. It also helps them get the first approval on a budget, because obviously being a pilot, you're talking about 6 months pilot. The budget will be a lot more, reduced compared to going there and asking for 18 months or 2 years budget. So it's easier to get the approval internally. Another reason why the pilot is good is because then you can also start getting the results and go to the sales team and show them that this is working and this is starting to bring results. And this is, I don't want to mention any of my clients or ex-clients, but it has worked at the very least for 3 really big global tech clients in APAC, where the sales team was initially skeptical because they had never been exposed to account-based marketing. It's nothing new there. And as soon as after the first pilot, after the first 6 months, when the CMO could demonstrate the results, the good results that the pilot was achieving, then the CMO itself, themselves, they started to be in a position where they had to push back the sales team, because they ran the pilot in Australia, and this was the CMO for the whole of APAC and Middle East for this company. And obviously the sales team, they spread the word. They started to share the results across different regions. So the CMO was literally bombarded by the sales team from the Middle East and Singapore and Japan specifically, because they wanted the same, but she didn't have the budget. So there was a really nice problem to have. Like I any day I want to have a CMO coming to me saying, "Oh, look, they saw what amazing results we had in Australia. Now they want to do the same in the Middle East. I'll have to find a budget for that. That's your job." And they did. We started with the Middle East and Singapore, and and we already could go straight into the strategic fun bit of ABM, because by then we already had the sales buy-in, which is normally half of the battle. All of this starting from a pilot. So that's the success I've seen is about, it comes really from starting with the pilots. Now, the second layer from that is, okay, let's say we sold in a pilot, we got a budget, we are ready to start, but then the question is, do we do a one-to-one, or is it a one-to-few pilot we start putting our money into? And there are deeper conversations and meetings where you want to involve the marketing and the sales team together to understand which one is the best solution. It really depends on their objectives, their budgets, where they want to go, where they're coming from, what they want, but you guide them through that.
Yeah. So it's broadly contextual in terms of whether one-to-one or one-to-few. It would be based on kind of the particular circumstances within the client, rather than having a hard and fast rule about, say, starting with one-to-few. Because that's something I've heard quite a lot in terms of it's a good idea to maybe start with one-to-few, maybe 3 clusters of 50 or something like that, or 3 clusters of 20, something like that.
Well, if I have to take out of 10 ABM programs that are pilots that are run, perhaps 7 of them would have been one-to-few. It is definitely, I'm a big fan of that. It's a great idea. And then from there, you can scale either to other clusters, or there is 1 or 2 accounts, or 1 account in each cluster that is already coming out, being more promising, on working better than others. And that's when you then scale into one-to-one. So yeah, I'm a big fan of one-to-few, but I've also had cases where, for different reasons, the one-to-one was the right one to go for. For example, for one of my clients, they had already done, before engaging with me, with the agency, they had already done a lot of work internally and research about one specific account. And so we still had to, confirm that it was the right thing to do. But it was a no-brainer. It made a lot of sense in that case. They had enough to go about to start with a one-to-one. They had all the good reasons. Yes, but mostly, it could be either or. But I'm a big fan of one-to-few, but I wouldn't exclude to do a pilot of one-to-one.
Yeah, that makes sense, I think. And I guess one thing you mentioned there was strong reasons for doing one-to-one in that particular case that you mentioned. What are strong reasons? What's an indicator that this is a really good opportunity for one-to-one ABM?
They had a really strong account director and the whole sales team around him, very much engaged with this customer. They had built a relationship. So it was an existing customer in other areas of the business, and there was a gap on one of the solutions that they wanted to sell, and it was a great opportunity. It was also timing. A lot of this was around timing. They had the right people on board, and this is, I think, knowing what sales team you have on board and how much the sales team wants to be involved or is already engaged and knows has already a relationship with the account. It needs to play a role in the decision that you're making. That was one thing. Then there was an RFP coming up later down the track. So we timed it in a way that we could have done the pilot first, and then once we completed that, we would have had time to also do what is called pursuit marketing, which is tailored specifically to a tender, an RFP, which eventually this client won. They won the account. Those were the main things. There was a lot of insights. There was already a lot of material. There were just too many good reasons for us to go elsewhere. It was a while ago, and I can maybe try and remember more later. But those are the main reasons: the relationship with the account team and the timing.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's interesting to hear what those are for sure, because I guess it's a people talk so much about one-to-one ABM and taking a really hyper targeted approach, and it's interesting to understand what the drivers are for doing that. You mentioned as well, just to kind of tie back to something you were saying about there was a particularly good pilot where the sales team were sort of knocking on your door asking for more, and you had to find
not asked
the client had
to the CMO.
Yeah. So asking, I guess, like for sort of more of what you were doing, tying into the next question about what makes good ABM. So what had gone right there? What was it that made them so keen to kind of get involved?
So normally, to answer this question in my trainings that I run to clients, I have slides and slides, which I'm not going to go through, obviously, right now. I can think about at least 10. But if I have to keep it to one, it is a really great way from the agency side. So from the moment when we start doing the analysis and insights and research on the account, or the accounts in this case, to the execution from the agency side. So from our side, it was a great example of all the parts of the agency working really well together. The strategy team worked hand in hand from day one with the creative team, although the creative team was, and I'm a big fan of this, I think I say this every day to my clients, and getting involved, I'm a big fan of getting the creative team involved as soon as possible into the journey. Even at the moment, that's what I do as my best practice. When I win a new account, I'll take my creative team on board. I don't even have a brief for the creative team yet. And by creative team, I just mean, anything that involves from graphic design and copywriting for the execution side of things. I would get them on board as soon as I win the account and we start working on a pilot or an ABM program, because by the time, and I keep them on the journey, even just for their knowledge, they don't have to action on anything. By the time we get to a stage of the ABM program where we hit the creative team, they have already at the back of their mind thought about potential ways. They've been on the journey. Also, I would have exposed them at least once or twice in a couple of touch points with the clients, because to me, it's really important that the sales team and the marketing team, that are ultimately my main stakeholders I need to convince, they already know who's going to take over after the strategy piece is done. They need to have the reassurance that the strategy person who did the beginning bit is not just disappearing, going into another project and never getting involved into the implementation again. And also they would want to see who the creative people that are actually going to make this work and happen, who they are, what's their authority, how much they know, if they've been involved about the strategy on the strategy. So I think in that case, the great success was from the agency side, all of us working really well together. And it's not just strategy and creative, the data team as well, and the content team, the program direction, all of this. In the ideal world, you want this to happen every time. For different reasons, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And what are are there any really specific techniques or approaches that you've seen that maybe, I guess, people might not be familiar with that you're seeing work well in an ABM context recently?
Are we talking tactics? We're going into
Yeah, I'd say
GTM
so. Yeah.
tactics. Look, I always refrain. I always refrain from suggesting specific tactics. It's also interesting. It's a question that a lot of my clients, we're in the strategy phase and they already want to know, what are we going to do? Is LinkedIn, article going to work whether they're a webinar, or are we doing flyers? I don't know, the executive breakfast for I always want to, it really depends. I don't like giving this answer, but it really depends. In my years of experience with account-based marketing, and even in B2B in general, I've never seen two go-to-market plans that look the same. It depends on a lot of things. So no, I wouldn't say there's not one thing. The magic is about orchestrating, and I'll use this word again. It's about the orchestration of all the parts in a really harmonic way. It's about making sure that we keep the messaging consistent across different touch points, offline, online, partnerships, sponsorships, events, whatever that is, and that we keep monitoring those touch points and those tactics, and we also see, we moderate them. We see what works, what doesn't work, and we perhaps adapt and change. So I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a really exciting answer there. No, there's not. And I'm really happy if someone wants to jump in and say, I've seen something that works really well. I would have seen some tactics that worked really well for some of my clients, like executive breakfast for one-to-one ABM programs for a tech client in Australia. But then the same tactic did not work for another client of mine at all. So for them, it was more, like online, some interactive PDF and one-to-one landing pages. But one is not better than the other. It depends on the audience. It depends on where your audience is as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really useful point, particularly in terms of understanding that something can work really well in one context and then not be right in another, and that it's not one size fits all. And particularly hearing that something that worked really well in one context didn't work in another is, I think, particularly helpful as a thing to know. I guess in as open a way as possible, when things don't work so well in an account-based marketing program, what do you think are the sort of trends and themes where it doesn't work so well? There's some obvious ones that come to my mind, but it'd be interesting to get your take on that.
So just so that I know I'm understanding the question right, you will know what happens when something doesn't work well, or what causes the problems in account-based marketing, because it does happen. Yeah, I just want to make sure.
I guess just when ABM doesn't work, why? What do you think are the main reasons typically?
Well, one, if there is lack of alignment across all the departments involved from the client side, and it's not everybody always obviously talks about sales and marketing alignment. I think it's a lot more than that. We don't just need these two departments to talk. We also need the customer success to be aligned, and the creative team and the product team. So when there's not buy-in within the executive leaders within the organization, you don't need the whole team to be on board, but you will need at least one advocate per team. It's very sad to see when you have a great program, you've designed a great program with great foundations and an amazing creative team doing great work, but because of the lack of buy-in internally, it just cannot evolve the way it should. So that's definitely one thing. Another thing is lack of maturity. Sometimes brands think they're ready to launch into an account-based marketing program, or they think they know even what an account-based marketing program is. And halfway through, or as they go through building the strategy and the go-to-market plan, the lack of maturity, unfortunately, can not make things impossible, but slow things down. Another reason is when, for different reasons, there is we lose momentum. So when there is too much time in between, let's say a strategic workshop and the playback session, or when there's too much time between the strategy and the creative outputs, when too much time is spent in between those milestones, you lose the sales team, even the agency loses momentum. And it sounds a really small thing. You think, oh, I can make up for that. Not always. And it's so painful because you've got something great in your hands. What else? Sometimes there is a change in management. So you might have the right advocates within the organization at the beginning of the program, but because designing and then running an ABM program takes months, is not a quick switch on, switch off. Sometimes you lose, sadly, it doesn't happen often, but if there is, you might lose the sales director or the CMO that was really behind the program, and they can pause it from a day to another. Another reason, I can give you a lot more, but let's talk about, as you can tell, it happens. Very, I'm sure I shared this with a lot of other ABM strategists. It's painful, but maybe this is what makes it really, it's not easy. ABM is not easy. Maybe that's what makes it exciting, and we want to try harder next time to make it work. I lost my other reasons. Sorry.
No, that's I think they're really good, and I think there's a theme there in terms of I guess it's very much about orchestrating people. It seems like, in terms of both sales and marketing, but also the internal and external marketing function in terms of agencies, fractional people, and then also probably beyond that, other people within the client, like the product and customer success and all those sorts of teams as well, which leads nicely on to the next question around sales and marketing alignment specifically. So I guess you obviously, to go back to that program you mentioned where sales were clearly really on board, what are the best ways to get sales on board with an ABM program? And perhaps more broadly, what are the best ways to get that sort of broader alignment around the program and that kind of that momentum and pace that you said was important as well?
Yes, so I want to say two things there. There are ways in which it will take time, but there are ways in which we can try and get the sales team on board as well as other teams. And I'll go through that in a second. But one thing I want to say, and I'm just very authentic and honest in what I've seen. And sometimes you can try all the most amazing strategies you want, but if you don't have the right people that are willing to get on board, if there's no interest from their side, if you don't have the right leaders on the other side, it's just not going to happen. Yeah. But yes, it's mostly successful. All of those things that I'm going to mention, at least for me, they've been successful. And one is running account-based marketing trainings. So I would go in and train the marketing team. And it could be either a couple of hours, depending on the maturity of how much they know already, or it could be a couple of full immersion days. And then another training session, I would be training the sales team, because the language slightly changes. You have to talk, to use different tone of voices. You have to use a language that resonates with the sales team more. So getting them involved in these training sessions, it really helps. It sounds really basic, but I've had a lot of very senior sales people at the end of a training telling me, I had no idea this is what it was. I thought it was something else, a lot more executional, a lot more, plug-in campaign. I want to give it a try. I want to have a piece of that. And as I said, the sales team would have depends on how big it is, but you're talking about at least 10, 20 people, even more at times. You don't need all of them to be on board. That would be amazing, but you just need one or two. That's fine. You smell them. You find your advocates in there. And together with the marketing team, you get those on board and they become your influencers almost within the organization. So that's training. Demonstrating quick wins within a pilot. Normally ABM, because it's run by big enterprises and they have really long sales cycles, you will have to wait 2 years to get meaty results. Obviously, you don't have the luxury all the time. So as you run those longer term programs, it's always really good to set KPIs and share them with the sales team and marketing team since the beginning to show them how within the first 3 to 6 months, you can start demonstrating quick wins, something tactical, something practical. They can already see in their hands and see the results that this is giving. That definitely helps. Who doesn't love data and numbers? So showing them reporting that is actionable is not just a list of contacts or data. And getting them excited, and this comes to the way the moderator acts and facilitates the workshops, the strategic workshops, but getting them involved as much as possible during those. That I think it's a skill that you either have or you don't, but I'm sure that all of the strategic moderators or facilitators of ABM programs, they've figured that out by now and they know how to use the right levers to get the sales team excited and on board. Sharing knowledge, sadly, sometimes, and I say this because most of my career has been client-side in marketing roles, but sadly, a lot of organizations, they start trusting or believing more an external consultant who's an expert on ABM in this case than their own internal marketing team. So I'm really happy to play their role, and it's almost a role play that we organize between the marketing team and the consultants, and it just works that they perceive us as the experts coming in on this specific topic. We're not there to touch their jobs or to tell them how they should do this before and after the surrounding. We just focus on that, and they're really receptive.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear. And I think one of the things that I heard from a former colleague at one point was that it's helpful to think of sales as a customer in an ABM program. I think I'm not making that up. So and one of the most important customers in that sort of context.
I'm smiling because it must have been someone at TMP, because I remembered that too.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think I know who it is, but yeah, but I guess it's in some ways that might be a slightly controversial thing because I think
I agree.
Yeah, but it makes sense, but maybe particularly in an ABM context as well. Yeah. So this year, is there a particular learning that stands out? Something that you've learned about ABM or a different perspective that's arisen this year for you?
Learn every day. There's not this year, not specifically. It's a learning curve. I think I'm really appreciating to be exposed, and this is perhaps happening because I'm a fractional now, so I have more time if I want to dedicate one whole day to research and exposure to how other countries or agencies or clients do ABM. So yeah, I have the luxury of time, and by doing this, I've been exposed to seeing how ABM it can be approached and done and be successful in a lot of different ways. So I've been trained and I've always been running, and I believe in this massively, account-based marketing programs for my clients at a really strategic level. And I'll keep doing that because I think there is a lot of good stuff in there. But I've also seen a lot of success in less strategic programs where out of the whole program, let's say you run it for like a few weeks, the strategy really takes just the very beginning, and most of it is fine-tuning the messaging or focusing on the platform, focusing on Salesforce rather than Terminus. So I'm starting to appreciate, although it's not my strength, but I'm starting to appreciate that technology side of things. And perhaps it made me realize not every client needs the full first 2 months or 1 month spent on the strategic side of things. Perhaps some clients, they have a smaller budget. I mostly work with enterprises, but the scale ups of this world or the SMBs, they might not have all these big budgets or time to spend on the strategic phase. So that can be just reduced, and more of the budget and the time can be spent in the execution, and then analyzing this data. And obviously it's not set and forget, and you keep updating the content and changing the platforms and seeing what's working, what's not working. This is really interesting. And another thing is the exposure to this relatively new concept that comes from the US about near bounds. It's I don't know if you've heard of that. It's the new, I would define it as the next step of the next evolution of account-based marketing. And it's about looking also at the not just inbound and outbound tactics, but the near bound. So what are the partners? Who are the people that the people that your accounts that you want to target is surrounded by? Who do they trust already? Who's in their circle that they are already trusting, that you can talk to then get closer to your accounts? I'm investigating that right now, and I think there is a big place in account-based marketing for this new near-bound concept.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Have heard about it, and people talked about it quite a lot. Yeah, I remember it sort of emerging, and this big focus on looking to work more with partners. I think it might have been correlated for me with when things started to slow down in the kind of technology market, B2B technology market in sort of 2022, 2023. I think that I noticed there was people shifted to thinking a lot about how they could work with partners. I mean, I know this isn't a question on our list, and I'm just conscious of time, but it would be interesting to understand how partners can play a role within an ABM program, because obviously there is also sometimes ABM can be focused on partners themselves. So I don't know if that's something that you've experienced and have anything that you'd sort of comment on about that.
No, unfortunately, the maturity of brands in general on ABM in APAC is not as high as you guys. I'm very jealous of that, the UK and the US, which means we can still do a lot of fun things, but we can't experiment perhaps as much as you can. Also, the budgets are smaller. I come from partner marketing background. My first years in Microsoft, all those years ago in Milan. So I'm a big fan of that. And I think it's when I read the book Nearbound, I have a copy right here. I thought, it's a no-brainer. And then I read somewhere, I think it was from the author, he said, it sounds very simple, but just because it's simple, it doesn't mean it's easy. That's why not many people are doing it, or they're not doing it right. So I will. In my work with my clients, I am introducing more and more, absolutely, this concept of partners, and it's about how receptive they are in wanting to do it. Again, it depends on their maturity, but I totally, there's a big place for partners to be played in ABM.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, it's an interesting area. I haven't. Well, yeah, actually, I think we wouldn't have positioned it in that way back in 2019. It was, but I did. I think do what would be considered a two-partner ABM program in 2019, focused on what's known as the Big Four in the UK, the Big Four kind of consulting and advisory firms, plus Accenture as well. And that was really interesting because it was if somebody had said marketing to me, and then in the year before, because that was the year before that I first kind of got into B2B marketing, if somebody had sort of, it was such a lot to get my head around in terms of working for a technology business focused on their existing GSI partners. I think we'd probably describe them as global systems integrator partners, and sort of how that route to market was working. And yeah, it was a lot to kind of to think about. I'm not sure I really fully understood what I was doing, but we managed to make it work. It was actually really, really successful, actually. So yes, I know this is one of the big ones, actually, one of the big questions that I know you were keen to cover. So, and maybe we've already covered quite a lot in terms of things like nearbound and so on, but big ABM trends, how ABM's evolving, how it has evolved. What are you seeing? What's your view on that?
Nearbound was going to be one of the things I was going to mention. So that's, just a repetition, just a confirmation of what I said there. And it's only the beginning. I know it's been around for a couple of years, but that's in the US and in the UK. As I said here, it's quite unknown as a concept. So I'm a big advocate, and I speak to, I'm literally right now physically sending copies of the book to my clients here in APAC because it's so good and I want them to know about this. So I'm really big on creating advocacy around the nearbound concept in APAC. It will take me a while, but I'm on the case, and I'm sure I'm not the only person. So that's that. Also, as I was mentioning earlier in the podcast, I've seen a lot of trends, especially again coming from the US, of agencies and research firms, and perhaps also clients, some brands, saying that they want to move away from the traditional categorization of the three types of account-based marketing, and they are creating their own hybrid versions, or things that are just more relevant for the market right now. That is not the same market it was 22 years ago. Those two things, and again, I see more and more agencies coming up with less strategic ABM, but more focus on the implementation side and platforms. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of trends. It's a lack of time. I'll talk to you in a few months. I'll have more time to read more, and there will be more to talk about. But those are for me so far the biggest trends I've seen.
Yeah, it's making me want to read the Nearbound book for sure.
You have to, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess one thing you mentioned just at the end there is around ABM platforms. That's something that might be interesting to go into a little bit more detail about, because I think some people may know exactly what you mean by that, but it might be interesting to define a bit about the different sort of technology. I'm assuming that's what you're sort of talking about, the different kind of account-based marketing technology platforms.
As I said, it's not my area of expertise. Normally, that's at that stage, I outsource it. I make sure that they have the right martech and they don't have too many. But that's where I normally, pass it on to the executive team. And it's an area what it is, it's basically using either Terminus or Salesforce or any other of those platforms where then they can actually implement whatever strategy is being built around the one-to-one or the one-to-few or one-to-many accounts. I think then there will be a lot of different platforms, especially in the one-to-many type, which is not the one I play within. I am more into the one-to-one and one-to-few. You can get lost just going into, going through. And now with AI, I see so many more coming up. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's not an area I've got a great deal of experience in terms of things like Terminus, and is demand-based one that people use quite a lot as well.
Correct. There is another one. I forgot there's another one. Well, there's so many. Terminus, Salesforce, demand-based, they're the biggest ones, but there are so many coming up. I see them on my feed on LinkedIn all the time, and then there's only so much time I need to choose where I focus my time, and my heart is still with the strategy. And so for me, although as an advisor, it's still really important to add value when I speak to clients and being able to advise what not to invest on, what not to do, and where to focus on. So at the very least, I need to know, what platforms they can ignore, where they need to put their efforts and concentrate their budget. And what I see, unfortunately, and perhaps this goes back to one of the questions you asked me earlier, when I see ABM failing sometimes, is because and this is perhaps the smaller clients, some brands, they think, I just purchased my new ABM platform. I have the MarTech tick. I don't need any human to actually make it happen. I don't need a strategy. I don't even have to build a messaging house of the value proposition. They think that just by purchasing the account-based marketing platform, the program can run. And that's big failure that unfortunately, you see it on LinkedIn as well, very, very often. There's still, even if you do have the technology sorted from the beginning, you still need the strategy to be there, either if you do it in-house or if you outsource it. But there's always that big piece before.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think also instinctively for me, whatever the type of B2B marketing that's being done, I really feel as though there can be an over-reliance on technology. I think that generally where I see things work best, it's based on sort of, as you're saying, the right strategy, the right sort of type of bringing the right people together and getting alignment with people and things like that. So rather than a sort of shiny piece of tech. And yeah, I guess moving on, final sort of question before we move on to the bonus questions that we'll be asking everybody who comes on. What are you working on at the moment? What kind of projects are you enjoying, and yeah, what's taking up your time day to day at the moment?
Yes, so again, the joys of working as a fractional, I get to choose the people I work with and the projects and that I work on and where I put my time. That's, I have to say that the level of flexibility is not easy to beat, to be honest. I now have the luxury of having more time in my hands. So I've been teaching as a lecturer at 2 universities here in Australia, the University of the Sunshine Coast in person here for the whole semester, and then down in Melbourne online, RMIT. And I teach digital marketing strategy down in Melbourne, and here cross-cultural management, which is just, it fits in really well with my life really and career. I'm really loving giving back to students, to the future generation of professionals. It's very inspiring. So those are two big things that I'm doing, and I'm really, really enjoying. I also have a few clients in ANZ that need to grow. Like the number one objective is lead generation, grow, expanding into different industries or expanding into different regions outside of Australia. So I'm running B2B. They're really highly strategic B2B marketing programs for them, and for another couple of clients more in Southeast Asia, ABM pilots. They're both one to few, all in the tech space. Most of my clients are in the tech industry. That's what I'm doing, and I am really excited to be also trying to expand my client base into Middle East and India. There are two very specific areas. I'm aware of that. For different reasons, a lot of opportunities. There's some of the countries I'm looking at moving to, like physically moving to in the near future. So it's great for me to start making connections from here. And also, as I was mentioning earlier, the budgets in Australia, they're not known for being huge, and the market size is smaller, and we all know that. So just because I'm based here on the Sunshine Coast, it doesn't mean I can only work with people in my time zone or in my continent. So I really thrive when I get thrown at different challenges and different languages and different time zones and different problems. So yeah, that's a lot of my focus. I'm spending at least half to 1 day a week on business development and networking in India and the Middle East. And also I'm working on a few speaking opportunities where I've been invited to speak at events here in Australia and in Asia next year. So yeah, I like that. It's all around B2B marketing and ABM. I think that's it.
Yeah, so it's very wide range of different things, and I shared that sort of excitement about India and Middle East, and I think particularly India is just a really fascinating market, and the potential there is just massive. So, and it does. I noticed just in the since I've started working in B2B, it's figured more and more over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, roughly speaking. So in terms of in conversations and, meeting with more people who are based there and so on. So yeah, it's really, really exciting. So finally, a couple of quick fire bonus questions. So if you could advise B2B businesses to do one thing in their marketing, what would it be?
Oh, yes. Spend time with your customers. It sounds like a no-brainer, but be out there. And it doesn't have to be a formal meeting. You can camouflage it as a going together at an event, or getting an extra tickets for a networking event, or drinks or lunch or anything. The insights that you can get out of being out there with them, they're just, they're never going to come through to you in an email, in a list of bullet points. And AI is not going to help you there either. And trust me, I use AI every day, but we cannot forget the human touch. So just spend as much as possible time out there with your customers. In the long or even short term, it will help your business. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And final question then. So what's your most contrarian take when it comes to B2B marketing?
One is, it can be fun. it can be, it's not, it's not all about B2C shiny fancy ads out there or, online. It's make B2B fun again. We are ultimately, even if we're selling boring or, quite dry IT solutions to software architects, they are humans. They have passions. They have kids at home. They love surfing. You might have something in common. So make it fun and work in then more realistically and practically work alongside with your creative team. Get them excited about the B2B campaign you're working on, and just allow the creative team to have fun with the insights that you have, with the strategy you put together. We are targeting C-suite most of the time, so decision makers with ABM, they're still people. So just have fun with it.
I really like both those answers, yeah, and it resonates a lot. So yeah, no, that's great. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and also for bearing with. Hopefully, I'm hoping the audio has come through okay for you, and also for other people, because I've been slightly having some sort of, I think I might have needed to turn on like echo cancellation or something on something or other. But thanks for coming on, and I really appreciate it. And it's been really interesting to hear about all of what you're up to, and your focus on ABM. You're clearly so steeped in it, so it's been really, really great to kind of, and I can hear as well the passion that comes through, in terms of, it's really close to sort of your heart. So it's really great to have the conversation about it. And finally, if you want to keep in touch with you, what's the best way for people to do that?
Oh, yes. LinkedIn, that's where my magic happens. Just find me on LinkedIn, Paola Piccinno. I'm not sure there's many of us. Yes, I'll share this anyway. You'll find me. LinkedIn,
I'll signpost
LinkedIn.
as well to your, I'll put links to your LinkedIn and so on. But brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on, and look forward to speaking soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Richard. Thank you very much. Bye.
Cheers.